Okay, so the first source, that I want to look at together is this Gemara on Shabbos. This is probably something you've been familiar with for a while. Maybe you haven't seen the Gemara. So let's read the Gemara inside. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Mitzvah Chunukah Neru Shabeso. Right, so the Gemara is about to describe there are three different levels of the mitzvah of Ner Chunukah. So the first level is Neru Shabeso. Every single house just needs to light one candle. On the first night you light one candle. On the third night you light candle. Doesn't matter how many people are sleeping in the house, and it doesn't matter what night it is. You just light one candle every single night. Mahadrin, and the people that do the mitzvah in a more beautiful way, ner l'kol echad ve'echad, that they have as many people are in the house. That's how many candles they light. So if there are 10 people sleeping in the house, then on the first night they light 10 candles. On the third night they light 10 candles, and on the 8th night they light 10 candles. It does, the days doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what night it is. It just matters how many people are sleeping in the house. The mahadrin min mahadrin. Okay, so now the third level, mahadrin min mahadrin. So we have machlokas Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. Beit Shammai omrim yom rishon madlik shmona mikam ve'elech poches v'holech. Beit Shammai says that on the first day you light 8 candles, and then every subsequent night you decrease 1 candle. So on the second night you light 7, on the last night you light 1. Ubeis Hillel omrim yom rishon madlik echas mikam ve'elech mosif v'holech. That on the first night you light 1. This is what we're familiar with, right? Last night we lit 2 candles. It's the second night of Hanukkah. Tonight, as Hashem, we're going to light 3 candles, and on the last night of Hanukkah we're going to light 8 candles. So that's Machlokas Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel, which we're going to focus on and get back to. Before we do that, let's just continue the Gemara. The Gemara gives 2 reasonings for this Machlokas between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel. Hopefully we'll get back to this, and it will also be important. Amar Ula, Pligi Batrei Amarai B'Marava, Rabbi Yossi Bar Avin v'Rabbi Yossi Bar Zvida. So says Ula that there are 2 different Amoraim that give 2 different explanations to this Machlokas. Chad Amar, one explanation of this Machlokas, it says, time of the Beis Shammai keneged Yomim HaNichnasim, time of the Beis Hillel keneged Yomim HaYotzim. That the reason Beit Shammai says that you go from 8 to 1 is because it's keneged the days that you have in front of you. So on the first night of Hanukkah, you have 8 days in front of you, 8 nights in front of you, so you light 8 candles. On the last night, you have 1 day in front of you, so you only light 1 candle. So it's about the days that are coming, as opposed to time of the Beis Hillel keneged Yomim HaYotzim. It's keneged the days that just passed. On the second night, you just finished your second day of Hanukkah, so you're going to only light 2 candles. It's about how many days passed. That's one explanation of the Machlokas. And another explanation, V'chai Amar, time of the Beit Shammai keneged Parei Echag. The reason Beit Shammai says you go from 8 to 1 is because on Sukkot, that's the way the parim, the korbanos they gave was 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, continue all the way until 1. So that's why Beit Shammai says what they say. The time of the Beis Hillel, the malim mikodesh ve'im moridin. Why does Beis Hillel say you go from 1 to 8, 1, 2, 3? This idea of malim mikodesh, you go up in kedusha. You always want to increase. You want to add more candles and more candles. So you start with 1 and you go to 8. That's the machlokas between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel. So, as you probably have seen when you prepared, there's a big machlokas in how to understand this mahadrin min mahadrin. This idea that you go from 1 to 8 or 8 to 1, right? We'll stick with 1 to 8 right now because that's what we do, and that's Beis Hillel, right? So how do we understand that? Is mahadrin min mahadrin going on Neru Shabeso, right? It's a better way of doing Neru Shabeso. Or is that even a continuation on Mahadrin? As in there are 3 levels. There's Neru Shabeso, there's Mahadrin, and then there's Mahadrin min Mahadrin. So what do I mean? So let's see the sources. So Toso says, Nir Lari, the Beit Shammai Beis Hillel lo kaima ela Neru Shabeso. That Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel, the machlokas about how to do Mahadrin min Mahadrin, that is only referring to Neru Shabeso. Shechein yesh yeter hider the ika hikira k'shemosif v'holech O mechaser shu keneged Yomim Nichnasim O HaYotzim. Aval im osa ner l'chol echad afilu Yosef mikam ve'elech leka hikira sheyasbiru shekach ish b'nei adam bebayis. Says Tosfos that it can't be referring to Mahadran. When it says that you have to, when there's this machlukas, whether you go up or whether you go down, it can't be built upon Mahadran. We can't integrate both the number of people in the house and the number of days. Because if you do that, then you won't even realize that we're going up each night. Because comes the first night, you light 1 candle. The second night, you light 2 candles. The third night, you light 3 candles. But you're not going to know whether it's because there are more people in the house, or whether it's because it's another night. And furthermore, if it's only going if Mahadran min Mahadran is going on the Mahadran, you're gonna no one will know what night it is. If you have 10 people sleeping in the house and it's the second night, so how many candles are you gonna have? You're gonna have 20 candles. Or if it's the 4th night and you have 5 people sleeping in the house, you're not going to know what's going on. So there's going to be no heker which night it is if you do that. So that's the opinion of Tosfos. Says the Rambam though, if we continue to source 3, Kama neros hu madlik b'Chunukah, mitzvah sheyeh kol echad, kol bayis u'bayis madlik ner echad, bein shayu anashim habayis merubim, bein shelo hayu ela adam echad. So first he maps out Mahadr, the Neru Shabeso is only lighting 1 candle. But Mahadr to mitzvah madlik neros keminyan anshe abayis ner l'kol echad ve'echad b'nei anashim bein nashim. Right? So then the Mahadran min Mahadran, which is you light 1 candle for every single person that's sleeping in the house. V'Mahadr yeter al zeh v'osem mitzvah min muvkar madlik ner l'kol echad ve'echad b'layla rishon mosif ve'horich b'kol layla ve'layla ner echad. So, says the Rambam that you do integrate both nights and the people. As in, he'll explain right now in the Halacha Beis. Ketzad, Harishu Anshe Bayis Asara, you have 10 people sleeping in the house. Belayla Rishon Madlik Asara Neros, Belayla Sheni Estrim, Ubelil Shlishi Shloshim. Right, so on the second night, if you have 10 people living in the house, the second night you light 10, the third night you light 30, the fourth night you light 40, until the 8th night you light 80 candles, says the Rambam. So we have here, just to review what we've seen until now, we have here a machlokus between Tosfos and between the Rambam. Says Tosfos, let's focus on the example that the Rambam gave. On the 8th night, if you have 10 people sleeping in the house, how many candles do you light according to Tosfos? Anyone? How many candles does Tosfos say? 8 candles, exactly, okay? And how many does the Rambam say? 80 candles, okay? So this is the machlokes between Tosfos and the Rambam. And the reason the Tosfos says what he says is because otherwise you're not going to know what night it is, because there are just so many candles and you have no clue if it's because there are a lot of people or it's another night, and it's not going to be clear. All right? At this point, is everyone clear? Can we go forward? Okay, fine. So let's quickly look at the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch brings down seemingly these 2 opinions. Kama neros madlik in source 4. Belayla Rishon madlik echad mikam ve'ich mosif v'holech echad b'chol layla ad shebelel ha'achron yashmona v'afilu im rabim b'nei bayit lo yadlik yoter. Says the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, that on the 8th night, no matter how many people are sleeping in the house, you light 8 candles. That's it. So whose opinion is that? Seemingly Tosfos' opinion. Says the Ramah, V'yesh omrim dechol echad mibnei habayis yadlik, v'china minag pashut, v'yizaher litain kol echad ve'echad neros sav b'makom ha'miyuchad, kedei sheyeh heker kama neros madlikin. Says the Ramah that you have to be careful. It says in the Ramah that everyone lights their own candles. You don't have 8, you have 80 if there are 10 people sleeping. But you have to be careful that everyone puts it in their own window and everyone lights in their own place. Okay? So we have here what seems to be, and this is what the Taz points out in source 5, it seems to be that the Mechaber is paskening like Tosfos, and the Ramah is paskening like Rambam. The Taz actually says this is strange because the Mechaber is a Sephardi posek who usually passes like the Rambam, and the Ramah is an Ashkenaz posek who would usually pass like the Baalei Tosfos. But what we're going to see is it's not so clear that the Ramah is necessarily arguing on the Tosfos. So why is this? So to understand this machlokes, I want to take a look at Tosfos and see two possible ways we could argue on Tosfos. So in order to do that, we have to highlight the two things, the two assumptions that Tosfos is making in his Shita. Okay? The first assumption that Tosfos makes is that there is this need, this necessity, that every single night you go and you see someone's menorah and you could tell what night it is. There's a heker, there's a certain sign and it's visible what night it is. On the fourth night you know it's the fourth night. On the fifth night you know it's the fifth night. That is an assumption Tosfos is making. And the second assumption he's making is that therefore, since we need that heker, it's impossible to get around it, and therefore you could only light one menorah. You could only light one Chunukah for each house, because we need that heker. So we're going to see that you could argue on either one of those assumptions. And that's going to be the two different opinions of the Ramah argues on one assumption, and we're going to see the Rambam argues on the other assumption. Okay, so Tosfos says you need this heker, and therefore you can only light one. Comes the Ramah. If we look at what the Ramah says, and this was at the base of Levi in source 6.7 and the Gra in source 7, comes the Ramah and says, I agree with you, Tosfos, that you need to have a heker. I agree it's important to know on the fourth night it's the fourth night, and it's important to know on the fifth night it's the fifth night. That is important, and that's part of Persuma Nisa, and that's part of the mitzvah. But says the Ramah, if we look, every person could just put their Chunukah in a different window, in a different place, and everything's great, everything's gewaldic, because you see this Chunukah here, fourth night, this one here, fourth night, and it's very visible, it's very clear what's going on. So says the Beis Halevi that the Ramah agrees with Tosfos. Just Tosfos was writing in a time when they would light outside, and it wasn't possible for everyone to put their menorah in a different place. So therefore, in order to have this heker, this necessity that it was visible which night it was, you only were able to light one. But says the Ramah, nowadays we light inside, we light in the windows, everyone could light in their own separate place. So everything's okay. We could have the heker and everyone could light. So that's the Ramah. But what's interesting is if we turn to the Rambam now, because the Rambam agrees with the Ramah that every single person lights. He also agrees that on the last night, on the 8th night of Chunukah, if there are 10 people in the house, you have 80 candles. But the Rambam doesn't have this added chiddush of the Ramah that everyone could light in their own separate place. That's actually the Griz in source 8. He explains why the Rambam doesn't allow that based on Hiddur Mitzvah. We'll skip that for now. But if you look in the Rambam, it's very clear that you're not lighting in different places. In fact, only one person is doing all the lighting. So if there are 10 people sleeping in the house, according to the Rambam, just the Baal Bais, just the father, is lighting all 80 candles on the 8th night. So according to the Rambam, there is no heker. So we're left with a big, difficult kasha. What's going on here? Why in the world does the Rambam, how could the Rambam say that you could just light 80 candles on the 8th night? What about Tosfos' concern that there's a heker and that you realize what night it is? So if we look back in the Gemara that we started with, the Gemara gave two reasons for the machlokus between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel. Right? Chad Amar v'Chad Amar, according to Ula. So the first reason Ula gives was it was Keneged Taima de Beis Shammai Keneged Yomim Nechnasim and Taima de Beis Hillel Keneged Yomim Hayotzim. That the reason for Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel has to do with the days that are upcoming or the days that we just passed. V'Chad Amar, but then there's a second opinion. That the time of Beit Shammai is Keneged the Parim and the time of the Beis Hillel is Malim B'Kodesh Ve'in Moridim. That the reason Beis Hillel says you need to add another candle every single night is not because of the days or anything, it's because Malim Mikodesh Ve'in Moridim. So the Gra points out that these two opinions are actually what the machlokus between the Rambam and Tosfos is about. The Tosfos, who understands that you need to have a heker, what night it is, and on the fourth night you have to know it's the fourth night, on the 8th night you have to know it's the 8th night, he understands like the first reason in the Gemara. Keneged Yamim Nasim or Keneged Yamim Hayotzim. There's a focus on days. You have to know the day. You have to understand what day it is of Chanukah in order to properly achieve Persuma Nisa. But there's another opinion in the Gemara, and that's what the Rambam is paskening like. The other opinion says it has nothing to do. The machlokus between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel about Mahadrim and Mahadrin has nothing to do with the days. It doesn't matter. On the 4th day, I don't need to know it's the 4th day. On the 8th day, I don't need to know it's the 8th day. That's not part of the mitzvah. Rather, Beis Hillel says the reason we light, an integral part of the mitzvah of Mahadrim and Mahadrin is an idea of Malim B'Kodesh Ve'in Moridin, an idea that we have to keep adding. But what is it? Why is it that the Rambam says you need to keep adding? What's the svara of the? I understand Tosos. They want to have a heker in the days, and that's why it's a beautiful way of doing the mitzvah. You understand it's the 4th day, it's the 5th day. You understand that the miracle lasted for more and more days. But what is it that the Rambam's trying to accomplish with his Mahadrim and Mahadrin? So I want to very quickly focus on the idea of light. I think the pshat in the Rambam is just an idea that he wants to have more light. It doesn't matter if you could realize and figure out what day it is or how many people are sleeping in the house. But the pshat in the Rambam is that every single day we just have to add more light and more light and more light. And it doesn't matter on the 4th night whether you know it's the 4th night or not, but you see a continuous increase in light according to the Rambam. And if we look in source 10, we'll see that this is an idea that's very, very important into the entire understanding of what Chanukah is all about. Says the Medrash in Bereshis, one of the first Medrashim on the Torah, Choshech zugos Yavon she'echshicha ineim shel Yisrael. That Yavon represents darkness because they darken the eyes of the Jews. And this is the idea of light that we're focused on for the next few minutes. What does light mean? Well, we speak about this idea of adding light and more light, and a little bit of light can get rid of all the darkness. But what is the idea of light? So there's a short line from Rav Hutner who says something. It's a little bit unclear what he's saying, but it will help us a little bit more in this understanding. Says Rav Hutner in source 11, Oro shel ner Chanukah hu apurkan mishibuda shel chachmas haTorah el chachmat shel Yavan. That the light of Neros Chanukah is a release, is a freeing from the chachma chutz, the external, the chutz, the superficial, the chachmat hachutz shel Yavan. Harei porkan zeh mityaches hu beikro l'shichoro shel koach hatanuk hapnimi miyado shel chutz. This light represents the idea of a shichur, of an escape of the pnimi from the chutz. And I think the idea of light is an idea of pnimius, an idea of internal, an idea of depth. Right? That's the title of the shiur, Becoming Jews of Depth. I think that's what light is. Says the Maharal in source 1 on the next page. He focuses, we're not going to read it inside, but he focuses on the idea of the number 8. Or we have 8 nights of Chanukah, 8 candles. 8 is Lamala Mina Teva. Why is that 8's Lamala Mina Teva? Why does 8 represent Lamala Mina Teva? So exactly, there's 7 days of creation. That's what the Maharal points out here. Also, if you think about a physical shape, a structure of any normal physical shape in this world, take a cube, right? So there's 6 sides to a cube. Then there's the inside of the cube. But that's 7, 6, and then the inside. But then there's something that's transcendent, something that's not even it's beyond the actual physical structure of the cube, and that's the Lamal Mina Teva. That's 8. That's the idea of light. And Yavon was all about darkness, all about the idea of just the physical, just the externals. That's why, if you think about it, the letters of Yavon are all just lines. Yud, a line, Vav, a line, Nun, a Vav, Nun Sofit, a line. And it's the idea that there was no inner, there was no transcendent, there was no pnimius to Yavon. They were all about the external, the superficial, that there was no depth to them. There was nothing beyond Yavon. And this is really the battle of Chanukah, to see the depth in everything we do. So there are makoros here. We're not gonna go into them right now, but there are makoros here about how Yavon came and they said that the Torah isn't deep. The Torah is just any other chachma. It's a superficial. It's the same thing as math or history or philosophy. It's nice. We'll learn it. There's wisdom there, but there's no depth. There's no pnimius to Torah. But that's what we're fighting against Yavan, and we're saying no, there is depth. And it's the same thing with a Jew. Came Yavan and they said there's no difference between there's no neshama in a Jew. There's no depth. There's no light within a Jew. There's no pnimius within a Jew. We're the same as you. It's all about the physical, the superficial. But that's what we were fighting against the Greeks. We were saying no, there is light. There is pnimius. There is a depth, and there's something much deeper. So you can take a look at these sources on your own. I'll finish with a story, and then with this Sfas Emes in the last source on the page. There's a story that my Rebbe, Moshe Tzvi, likes to say over. He said there was once a rabbi that was he lived in the city, and there was another lady that lived in his building, a non-Jewish woman, and she used to ask him questions. Hey Rabbi, how's it going? Hey Rabbi, what's with these candles you're putting in your mirror, in your window, whatever it is. So one of the questions she asked is, hey Rabbi, what's that little thing you have hanging on your door? What is that? What's going on here? So he said, it protects us from the evil spirits. He tried to say something that doesn't sound too weird, but explains it a little bit. Okay, fine, that was the end. A few days later, a few weeks later, she comes knocking on his door, and she said, hey Rabbi, I got one of those boxes. I put it on my door. I bought one of those boxes. It's in my apartment. Can you help me hang it on my door? I need some help with this. So he didn't know what to do, but he's not going to ignore her. So he comes upstairs, and he takes the mezuzah, and he says, where's the scroll that was inside? And she says, the instructions, I threw it out. I figured you knew what you were doing. And it's a funny story, but it's also a very deep, important story. And it's the idea that sometimes we also throw out the inside, the light, the pnimius, the instruction. I mean, we think they're instructions, but really that's what it's all about. The light on the inside that Yavam was trying to make us forget and to make us ignore. I have one final source. It's a source from Sfas Emes on Purim. But there's a lot of connections between Purim and Chunukah, and it's a beautiful Torah anyway, and it also has to do with light, so hopefully we'll finish with this, we'll learn it inside. Says the Sfas Emes, Ita b'Gemara, Ora zu Torah, Simcha zu Yom Tov, Sason Mila v'Yikar Tefillin. Right? The pasuk in the Megillah says, V'yim Yisrael Ora v'Simcha v'Sason v'Yikar, and the Gemara darshans it out, Ora zu Torah. When it says the Jews had light, it means the Jews had Torah. Says the Sfas Emes, why didn't it just say the Jews had Torah and Yom Tov and Mila and Tefillin? Why does it have to say that the Jews had light and happiness and jubilation and Yikar? I don't even know how to translate Yikar. Beauty of some sort, right? Why is it using these other words if it's really just referring to the fact that they had Torah, Yom Tov, Mila, and Tefillin? Says the Sfas Emes, that was the miracle of Purim, and I think it's true this is also the miracle of Chanukah, and this is what we're fighting for nowadays. That we have to realize, we have to appreciate that Torah actually is light. We can't forget about the Orah within the Torah. And that's what it means that the Jews had Orah, that's referring to Torah. Because a lot of times we can learn and we can have Torah, but if we don't realize that there's light deep within the Torah, and that there's a pnimius, and there's a light deep within every Jew, then we're losing the battle to Yavan, because that's what Yavan wants us to do. So hopefully everyone could have the greeting for Shabbos Chanukah. Rav Weinberger mentioned this in his share last Chanukah. The greeting for Shabbos Chanukah, which we're about to go into, is you should have a lichtige Shabbos, a Shabbos filled with light. So hopefully everyone should have a lichtige Shabbos and continue to have just light in everything you do for the entire year. Amen.